Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of complex topics. And today we're going to be doing something pretty special. We're taking a deep dive into guiding human decisions in the age of AI, which is a book written by the brilliant minds behind this very podcast, Future Minds.
That's right. We're not just going to skim the surface here. We're going deep. We're unpacking the key insights, and we're going to explore what all of it means for you.
I'm intrigued already. So we're talking about guardrails, but not the kind you see on a highway. What exactly are guardrails in this context, and why are they suddenly so important?
Think of them as like the structures, the systems that really shape our decisions. They influence how we filter information, how we weigh different options, and how we ultimately make choices.
Okay.
And they can be formal, like laws. Or they can be informal, like social norms. And in an age where we're just bombarded with information and AI is playing an increasingly prominent role, these guardrails, they're more critical than ever.
Okay, so it's not about like restricting our freedom or putting us in a box. It's more about giving us a framework to navigate this increasingly complex world.
Precisely. Good guardrails. They empower us to make better decisions. They don't just limit our choices.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot between guidance and autonomy.
I like that. It's like having a map and compass, right?
Yeah.
They don't dictate your destination, but they help you navigate the terrain and avoid getting lost.
Exactly.
But how does this play out in like real world scenarios? How do we actually see this happening?
Well, let's start with a chilling example. The Uberlingen mid-air collision back in 2002.
Oh, wow.
Where two planes collided because of conflicting instructions.
Yeah, the one where the pilots were given conflicting instructions from the air traffic controller and the plane's collision avoidance system.
Exactly. It's I think, a really stark reminder that even with good intentions and access to information, our cognitive biases, they can still lead us to disastrous outcomes.
Cognitive biases. Just remind me what those are again.
They're like mental shortcuts that our brains use to process information very quickly, but they can lead to systematic errors in judgment. Think of confirmation bias, where we have this tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs, or the availability heuristic, where we overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled.
Okay, yeah. I remember now. So in the case of the Uberlingen collision, the pilots might have been swayed by confirmation bias, sticking with the air traffic controller's instructions because they aligned with their initial assessment of the situation.
That's one plausible explanation. And here's the kicker. We all have these biases, even if we're not aware of them.
Yeah.
Have you ever bought something just because everyone else was raving about it, even though it wasn't really something you needed?
Definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see how understanding these biases can help us make more informed decisions.
Yes.
Not just in, life or death scenarios, but also just in everyday life.
Exactly. And that's where guardrails come in. They can help us counteract our biases and provide a framework for making more rational and informed choices. But to really grasp their importance, we need to understand how they've evolved, particularly in the digital age.
Right, because the internet really changed everything, didn't it?
It did.
It's like we entered a whole new frontier where the old rules just did not apply.
Precisely. Remember the early days of the internet? There was this huge debate about how to govern this new cyberspace.
Yeah.
Some argued that real-world laws just simply wouldn't translate to this virtual realm.
Right, because trying to apply like traditional regulations to the internet would be like, I don't know, trying to catch smoke with a net.
Exactly. And one of the most influential thinkers on this topic was Lawrence Lessig, who famously argued that in the digital world, code is law.
Oh, wow.
He was basically saying that the software and algorithms that underpin the internet are the real forces shaping online behavior.
Wait, so are you saying that we're governed by algorithms, like they hold more power than actual laws?
It's not that simple, but Lessig raised a crucial point. He argued that by controlling the flow of information, technology could actually enforce decisions in ways that traditional law simply couldn't. He called this toading.
Toading.
And he illustrated it with this this bizarre incident in a virtual community called Lambda Mo.
Lambda Mo. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, back in 1993, Lambda Mo was one of the first virtual reality spaces where people could interact through text-based avatars.
Okay.
And one user exploited a bug in the code to take control of other avatars, leading to a virtual assault.
A virtual assault. That's disturbing.
It certainly was, and the community was outraged.
Right.
But here's the thing. They couldn't rely on traditional legal systems to punish the perpetrator. Instead, a programmer simply edited the code, banning the offender from the system.
Wow. So they basically toaded him.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the rules of the game to kick him out.
Exactly. And while this might seem like a strained, isolated incident, it highlights a fundamental shift in how power operates online. The way information is structured and controlled can have a profound impact on our behavior and our choices, even more so than traditional laws.
So are you suggesting that we're all just puppets in a digital puppet show? Controlled by, like, invisible strings of code?
Not quite. But it is important to be aware of how code shapes our online experiences, and often without us even realizing it.
Right.
Think about social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. They're constantly tweaking their algorithms to control what we see, influencing our perceptions and ultimately our decisions.
Right. It's like they're curating our reality.
Yes.
Deciding what information we get to see and how it's presented. And it's not just social media, right? Think about those recommendation algorithms on YouTube and Netflix. They're constantly nudging us toward certain choices.
Precisely. Yeah. And while this can be helpful in filtering information or discovering new things, it also raises concerns about manipulation, echo chambers, and the spread of misinformation.
Which brings us to another massive issue. Misinformation. With all the fake news swirling around online, this feels more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. And it's not just a modern problem either. To understand the challenge, let's go back in time to the story of Joe Cassidy and the GJ disinformation campaign during the Cold War.
Joe Cassidy, is that the FBI agent who tried to fool the Soviets with fake documents about a superweapon?
That's the one. His idea was to slow down the Soviet Union's chemical weapons program by creating fake documents about a fictional U.S. nerve gas called GJ. The hope was that they'd waste resources chasing a phantom weapon.
It's like a scene straight out of a spy thriller. Did it work?
Initially, yes. The Soviets fell for it, and they poured resources into researching this non-existent GJ. But the plan backfired spectacularly. As they struggled to replicate GJ, they accidentally stumbled upon a real nerve agent.
Oh, no.
Far deadlier than anything the U.S. had developed. They called it Novichok.
Wow. So the disinformation campaign not only failed, but it actually led to the creation of a more dangerous weapon.
Precisely. It's I think a stark reminder that misinformation can have unpredictable and far-reaching consequences, even when deployed with good intentions.
It makes you think about how we tackle this in the age of social media where information spreads like wildfire. If it was this difficult to control misinformation during the Cold War, how can we possibly manage it now?
That's the million-dollar question. Traditionally, we've relied on things like free speech principles, libel laws, and journalistic ethics to combat misinformation.
Right.
But these mechanisms, they're often inadequate in the digital age where information spreads so rapidly and anonymously. It's like trying to fight a wildfire with a garden hose.
So what's the solution? Can technology actually help us filter out the noise and get to the truth?
Well, there's this growing trend of using technology to try and tackle this with algorithms that are designed to flag fake news, to identify bots, and to even remove harmful content.
Okay. Sounds promising. Can technology really be the silver bullet?
Like any tool, it has its pros and cons. Technology can help us identify patterns and scale up our efforts in ways that humans alone never could. But it also raises concerns about censorship, algorithmic bias, and the erosion of our own critical thinking skills.
So it's like outsourcing our brains to a computer program.
It's a legitimate concern. If we're constantly relying on algorithms to tell us what's true, we might become less likely to question information or engage in critical thinking, which is essential for a healthy society.
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? We need to be mindful of both the benefits and the risks of using technology to address these complex social problems like misinformation.
Absolutely. And it's not just about filtering out bad information. It's about fostering a culture of critical thinking and healthy skepticism. We need to be able to evaluate information for ourselves, weigh different perspectives, and engage in reasoned debate.
Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Right.
But what about the role of AI in all of this? We hear so much about AI taking over decision-making, which can be a bit unsettling.
That's a valid concern. And it brings us to another crucial aspect of guardrails.
Okay.
How to ensure that AI supports human decision-making without undermining our autonomy and our creativity.
Right.
The allure of data-driven AI for decision-making is undeniable, right? Imagine an AI that could analyze vast amounts of data and then present you with the optimal choice in any situation. No more second-guessing, no more agonizing over tough decisions.
It sounds tempting, but I have a feeling there's a catch.
Of course. One concern is the black box problem,
Right.
where we often don't fully understand how AI systems arrive at their decisions, which can be problematic when it comes to accountability.
Yeah.
Another concern is that AI systems can inherit and amplify existing biases
Right.
that are present in the data that they're trained on.
Right. So garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Just because a decision is made by an AI doesn't automatically make it fair or unbiased.
Right.
And even if we address the issues of transparency and bias, there's another more fundamental problem with over-reliance on AI for decision-making. It can lead to what we call a decisional monoculture.
Decisional monoculture. That sounds ominous.
Imagine a world where everyone uses the same AI systems to make decisions.
Right.
All trained on the same data, all optimized for the same outcomes. What happens to diversity of thought, creativity, and the ability to adapt to new situations?
It's like everyone wearing the same uniform, thinking the same thoughts, marching in lockstep toward a predetermined destination.
Yes.
Not exactly a recipe for progress.
Precisely. Decisional monoculture can stifle innovation, limit our choices, and make us less resilient in the face of change.
So how do we strike the right balance? How do we ensure that AI supports human decision-making without undermining our capacity for creativity and adaptability?
That's a key question that we need to grapple with, and it leads us to a more profound question.
Okay.
How do we navigate uncertainty and embrace self-restraint in a world that's increasingly complex and unpredictable?
Okay, now we're getting philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely intrigued. Where do we begin?
Let's look at another powerful story, the Kaprun Tunnel fire in 2000, where a group of skiers were trapped in a burning tunnel in the Austrian Alps.
Oh, wow. The one where a volunteer firefighter led a group downhill towards the source of the fire instead of following the instinct to run uphill.
That's the one. It's a harrowing tale, but it offers a profound lesson about the importance of context in decision-making.
Okay, I'm all ears. What happened?
Most passengers, they instinctively ran uphill, away from the flames. But this firefighter, drawing on his training and his understanding of fire behavior, realized that running uphill in a tunnel fire, that was a death trap. So he led his group downhill towards the fire's source.
Wow.
Knowing that the tunnel was acting like a chimney, drawing air in from the bottom, pushing smoke and heat upwards.
That's incredibly counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it makes perfect sense when you understand how fire behaves in that kind of environment.
Exactly. It shows that the best decision isn't always the most obvious one.
Right.
It requires understanding the specific context, the nuances, the often hidden dynamics at play.
So simply having more information isn't enough? We need to know how to apply that information in a meaningful way.
Yes.
Taking into account the specific circumstances.
Precisely. An algorithm might have directed everyone uphill, away from the fire's location, with tragic consequences. Sometimes the best decisions are made by humans who can draw on their experience, their intuition, and their understanding of the context.
It's a good reminder that we can't just blindly trust algorithms or pre-programmed responses.
Right.
We need to engage our critical thinking skills and be willing to deviate from the norm when the situation demands it.
Absolutely. And it's not just about making the right choice either. It's also about knowing when to restrain ourselves, when to question our assumptions, when to seek out alternative perspectives. We call this self-restraint. And it's a crucial design feature for any effective guardrail system.
Self-restraint. So it's like building a safety valve into the system.
Yeah.
A way to prevent things from going off the rails, so to speak.
You could say that. It's about recognizing that no system is perfect. There will always be unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
And sometimes the wisest course of action is to pause, reflect, and consider the potential consequences of our choices.
So it's not just about blindly following the rules or trusting the algorithm. It's about using our judgment, our critical thinking skills, and our sense of responsibility to make the best decisions possible.
Exactly. And there are some inspiring real-world examples of self-restraint in action. Take Stanislav Petrov, the Soviet officer who potentially averted a nuclear war during the Cold War.
Didn't he disobey orders when the early warning system indicated a U.S. missile attack?
That's him. He had every reason to believe the attack was real, but something felt off.
Okay.
He trusted his gut, his sense that something was wrong, and he chose not to launch a retaliatory strike.
Wow, talk about a high-pressure situation. He must have had nerves of steel.
He certainly did, and his act of self-restraint likely saved millions of lives. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes questioning the system or simply taking a moment to pause and reflect can have profound consequences.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how many other unsung heroes have exercised self-restraint in the face of uncertainty and pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a quality we should all cultivate, not just in our personal lives, but in our institutions and organizations as well.
I couldn't agree more. And it brings us back to the design of guardrails. If we want to create systems that support good decision-making, we need to build in mechanisms for self-restraint.
Okay.
For questioning assumptions, for considering alternative perspectives.
So instead of designing systems that are rigid and inflexible, we need to create systems that are adaptable, that allow for nuance, and that recognize the limits of our knowledge and the importance of human judgment.
Precisely. And this leads us to 3 key design principles for effective guardrails: individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning.
Okay. Those sound promising. But before we dive into those principles, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll explore how these principles can help us reimagine guardrails for a world that's increasingly complex, interconnected, and unpredictable. All right, so before the break, we were talking about how critical guardrails are in this age of AI and information overload, and you mentioned 3 key design principles for effective guardrails: individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning. Let's unpack these, starting with individual empowerment. What does that actually look like in practice?
Individual empowerment means designing guardrails that support your autonomy and agency. So instead of dictating your choices, they provide you with the tools and the information you need to make informed decisions that align with your own values and your own goals.
So it's less about hard and fast rules and more about giving individuals the freedom to navigate within a set of guiding principles.
Exactly. A great example of this is the concept of legal pluralism, which recognizes that different legal systems and norms can coexist and even overlap. It acknowledges that a one-size-fits-all approach to law simply doesn't work in a complex world.
Legal pluralism. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that concept. Can you give me a real-world example of how that works?
Think about the internet. We already have different rules and regulations governing online behavior, depending on the platform, the jurisdiction, and the type of content. Legal pluralism provides a framework for navigating this complex landscape, acknowledging that different communities and contexts may require different approaches.
That makes sense. Trying to impose a single set of rules on everyone everywhere would be impractical, if not impossible.
Precisely, and it would stifle innovation and diversity. We need systems that can adapt to different contexts and cultures, rather than imposing a rigid one-size-fits-all approach. This principle of adaptability applies to guardrails in other areas as well, from cybersecurity to environmental protection.
Okay, I see how individual empowerment can lead to more resilient and flexible systems. But what about social anchorage? How does that fit into the picture?
Social anchorage is about grounding guardrails in shared values and norms. It's about ensuring that the systems we create reflect the needs and the perspectives of the communities they're designed to serve.
So it's like building a house on solid ground. If the guardrails aren't rooted in something meaningful, something that resonates with the community, they're likely to collapse under pressure.
That's a great analogy, and it's particularly important in the digital age where technology can sometimes feel disconnected from our lived experiences. We need to ensure that the algorithms and platforms that shape our online lives are aligned with our values and accountable to the communities they impact. It's not just about writing code, it's about engaging in a dialogue about the kind of digital world we want to create.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we actually ensure that these guardrails are truly socially anchored? How does that play out in practice?
One way is through participatory design processes,
Okay.
involving the people who will be affected by these guardrails in their creation and their implementation ensures that diverse voices are heard and different perspectives are considered.
That sounds much more democratic and inclusive than having a small group of experts dictating what's best for everyone. It seems like a much more sustainable approach in the long run.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the third principle, learning. Effective guardrails are designed to be iterative, learning from experience and adapting to new information and changing circumstances.
It's like building a feedback loop into the system.
Mm-hmm.
You make a decision, you see how it plays out, you learn from the results, and you adjust accordingly.
Exactly. Think about how scientific knowledge advances.
Right.
We conduct experiments, we gather data, we refine our theories, and we're constantly learning and evolving. The same iterative process should apply to the design of guardrails as well.
So we need to view guardrails not as static rules, but as dynamic systems that are constantly being tested, refined, and improved.
Precisely. And to facilitate this learning process, we need mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the impact of guardrails.
Okay.
Identifying areas where they need to be adjusted or improved.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these three principles, individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning, can really work together to create more effective and resilient guardrails. But how do these principles translate into real-world solutions? Can you give me some concrete examples?
Absolutely. Let's start with CERT, the Computer Emergency Response Team.
CERT. They're the folks who help organizations respond to cyber attacks and data breaches, right?
That's right. And CERT embodies these principles in a really interesting way.
Okay.
It's not a top-down command and control structure. Instead, it's a global network of independent organizations that share information, expertise, and best practices to help each other respond to cyber threats more effectively.
So it's like a neighborhood watch for the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's looking out for each other and sharing information to keep the community safe.
That's a great analogy. And a key part of CERT's success is its emphasis on information sharing and adaptive guardrails.
Adaptive guardrails. So they're not just relying on a fixed set of rules or protocols.
Exactly. They're constantly evolving their approach based on the latest threats and vulnerabilities. Think back to the example we discussed earlier about Russia's cyber attacks on Ukraine in the lead up to the invasion. The U.S. government shared intelligence about these attacks publicly very quickly. Mm-hmm.
And a key part of that rapid response was the work of Ukraine's CERT.
Right. They were able to leverage a global network of experts to understand the threat and coordinate a response.
Precisely. And it highlights the power of collaborative, information-driven approaches to cybersecurity. CERT is a great example of how guardrails can be designed to empower individuals and organizations to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
To be socially anchored in a global community of practice, and to be constantly learning and adapting to new challenges.
It's a fascinating model, and it seems like these principles could be applied to a wide range of challenges, not just in the digital realm. Do you have any other examples?
Absolutely. Let's shift gears and look at a completely different context. The Volta River Basin in West Africa.
The Volta River, that's a major source of water for millions of people across several countries, right? What's the guardrails story there?
It's a story about how a group of countries came together to address a shared environmental challenge using a collaborative approach.
Known as Integrated Water Resources Management, or IWRM.
Integrated Water Resources Management. So it's not just about managing the water itself, but about considering all the interconnected factors that affect the entire river basin.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of the ecosystem, the social and economic factors at play, and the need for coordinated decision-making. It brings together diverse stakeholders, governments, communities, businesses to work towards a common goal.
So it's a great example of how social anchorage can lead to a more sustainable and equitable approach to resource management.
Precisely. The Volta River Basin faced a severe drought back in 1998, leading to power shortages in Ghana and conflicts over water resources. In the aftermath of that crisis, a coalition of international organizations and NGOs promoted IWRM as a way to manage the river basin more sustainably and equitably.
So they created a set of guardrails that encouraged cooperation and informed decision-making.
Yeah. Exactly. And those guardrails were designed to be participatory and inclusive, giving different stakeholders a voice in the process and ensuring that the solutions reflected the values and priorities of the communities they served. This approach led to the creation of the Volta Basin Authority, a transboundary institution representing all 6 countries that share the river basin.
So they created a space for dialogue and collaboration, recognizing that these complex challenges require a collective effort.
That's right. And through this collaborative process, they've been able to develop a shared vision for the future of the river basin and implement a range of measures to address the challenges of drought, pollution, and over-extraction of water resources.
It's a great example of how social anchorage and collaborative learning can lead to more effective and sustainable solutions. These principles really do seem to be applicable across a wide range of domains.
They really are. And our next case study takes us into the world of business and human rights. We're going to look at the Global Network Initiative, or GNI.
The Global Network Initiative, I'm not familiar with them. What do they do?
The GNI brings together tech companies, human rights groups, and investors to address the challenges of free expression and privacy in a globalized digital world.
Okay.
They were formed in response to a series of incidents where tech companies were accused of complicity in human rights abuses.
Oh, right. Like when Yahoo provided user data to the Chinese government, which led to the arrest of dissident. Those cases really highlighted the ethical dilemmas faced by tech companies operating in countries with different laws and values. It's a tricky landscape to navigate.
Absolutely. And instead of relying solely on government regulation or self-regulation by individual companies, the GNI created a multi-stakeholder initiative to develop a set of principles and guidelines for responsible business practices.
So another example of social anchorage and collaborative learning in action?
Exactly. The GNI principles cover a wide range of issues, including freedom of expression, privacy, and security. They provide a framework for tech companies to navigate complex situations where they might face conflicting legal obligations and ethical challenges.
So it's not just about following the letter of the law, but about upholding a set of ethical principles that transcend national boundaries.
Precisely. GNI has been instrumental in promoting transparency and accountability in the tech industry, and they've played a key role in developing mechanisms for addressing grievances and providing remedies for individuals whose rights have been violated.
It's encouraging to see these kinds of initiatives gaining traction. It seems like we're moving towards a more ethical and human-centered approach to governing the digital world. Do you have any other examples to share?
One final example, and it might surprise you.
Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia that anyone can edit. I wouldn't immediately think of it as a model for guardrails.
It might seem counterintuitive, but Wikipedia is actually a fascinating case study. It's a self-governing community that has developed a surprisingly sophisticated system of guardrails to ensure the quality and reliability of its content.
So it's not just a free-for-all where anyone can post anything they want?
Not at all. Wikipedia has a complex set of policies and guidelines that govern everything from the tone and style of articles to the verification of sources and the resolution of disputes.
So they've created a system of social norms and procedures to ensure that the information is accurate and trustworthy.
Exactly. And a key feature of Wikipedia is its emphasis on individual empowerment and collaborative learning. Anyone can contribute, but there's a system in place to ensure that contributions are valuable and that the community can learn from its mistakes.
That reminds me of the debate over whether to capitalize in the Beatles. They actually had a long discussion and a community vote to settle that one.
Exactly. It highlights how Wikipedia uses a combination of social norms, technical tools, and consensus-building processes to govern its content. It's a remarkable example of how a decentralized, self-organizing community can develop effective and adaptable guardrails.
It's also a reminder that guardrails don't have to be imposed from the top down. They can emerge organically from a community that's committed to shared values and goals.
Absolutely. And Wikipedia's success is a testament to the power of individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning. It's a vast and valuable resource that benefits millions of people around the world.
It's truly inspiring. And it makes you wonder how these principles could be applied to other areas of our lives where collective action and shared governance are essential. But we're running out of time for this deep dive.
Right.
Before we wrap up, I want to hear more about Creative Commons. You mentioned earlier that they're doing some really interesting work at the intersection of technology and social change.
Absolutely. Creative Commons is a fascinating example of how technology can be used to empower individuals, foster collaboration, and build a more robust public domain.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more. So we're back and ready to dive into Creative Commons.
Okay.
I know they've done some groundbreaking work with those licenses that allow creators to share their work more freely.
Right.
But what's the bigger picture here? What problem were they trying to solve?
They were tackling the rigidity of traditional copyright law,
Okay.
which was becoming increasingly problematic in the digital age.
Right.
Copyright is designed to protect the rights of creators,
Right.
which is important.
Of course, creators deserve to be recognized and rewarded for their work.
Absolutely. But the problem was that traditional copyright law often made it difficult for creators to share their work freely, to collaborate with others,
Right.
or to allow their creations to be adapted and reused in new and innovative ways.
Right. It's like building a wall around a beautiful garden. Sure, it protects the flowers, but it also prevents people from enjoying them.
That's a great analogy. And this was particularly problematic in the early days of the internet, when digital technology made it incredibly easy to copy and share creative works. The old rules simply didn't fit this new reality.
It's like everyone suddenly had a printing press and a global distribution network at their fingertips. The old system was really struggling to keep up.
Exactly. So a group of legal scholars, activists, and technologists came together to create Creative Commons, an organization dedicated to finding a better way.
A better way to balance the rights of creators with the benefits of sharing and collaboration.
Precisely. And their solution was brilliant in its simplicity. They created a set of standardized licenses that allowed creators to choose how they wanted their work to be used.
So instead of the traditional all-or-nothing approach of copyright, creators could offer a range of options, from allowing their work to be freely copied and distributed to restricting commercial use or requiring attribution.
That's right. And the beauty of Creative Commons is that they use technology to make licensing easier and more transparent. They created a website where creators could choose a license, generate a code snippet, and embed it in their work.
So it's like a label that clearly communicates the terms of use, making it simple for others to understand how they can legally use the work.
Precisely. And this simple innovation had a ripple effect. It empowered creators to share their work more freely, it fostered collaboration and innovation, and it helped to build a more robust public domain.
A public domain that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. And Creative Commons is a prime example of how technology can be used to support social guardrails, not to replace them.
So it's not about using technology to control or restrict our behavior, but rather to empower us, to give us more choices.
Yes.
And to create a more equitable and accessible digital world.
Precisely. And it beautifully illustrates those three principles we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning.
Right. Creative Commons empowers creators to make choices about how their work is used. It's anchored in a global community of creators and users.
Yes.
And it's constantly learning and adapting to new challenges and opportunities.
Exactly. And it's a model that can be applied to other areas as well.
Yes.
We've talked about the potential downsides of AI, but what if we could use the Creative Commons approach to mitigate those risks, particularly when it comes to algorithmic bias?
That's an intriguing thought. We discussed earlier how algorithms can perpetuate existing biases even when they're not explicitly programmed to do so.
Right.
It's like a hidden code embedded in the data, reflecting historical patterns of discrimination and inequality.
Precisely. And these biases can be incredibly difficult to detect, let alone address.
Right.
Simply removing sensitive variables from the algorithm often isn't enough. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet with a Band-Aid.
Right.
You might stop the drip temporarily, but the underlying problem remains.
So we need a more systemic approach. One that gets to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
And leverages technology in a way that promotes fairness and justice. But how can the Creative Commons model help us achieve that?
Think about it this way. Just as Creative Commons empowers creators to choose how their work is used, we can use technology to empower individuals to control their data and to hold algorithms accountable.
So giving people more transparency and control over how their data is used
Mm,
and how algorithms are making decisions that impact their lives.
exactly. And just as Creative Commons fosters collaboration and innovation, we can use technology to bring together diverse stakeholders, data scientists, ethicists, community members to develop more equitable and just algorithms.
So creating a space for dialogue and collaboration where we can challenge assumptions and explore alternative approaches.
Precisely. And just as Creative Commons is constantly evolving, we need to create systems that allow us to monitor and evaluate the impact of algorithms, to identify and mitigate biases, and to ensure that these powerful tools are truly serving the common good.
It's a powerful vision,
Hmm.
and it shows that we're not powerless in the face of these technological advancements. We can use technology to shape a more just and equitable world, not just for a select few, but for everyone.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the core message of this deep dive.
Okay.
The future of guardrails is not about choosing between technology and social systems. It's about finding ways to integrate them, to leverage the strengths of each, and to create a more human-centered and resilient approach to governing information and decision-making.
This has been an incredible journey. We've explored the consequences of conflicting information, the power of self-restraint, and the innovative approaches of organizations like CERT, the Volta River Basin Authority, the Global Network Initiative, Wikipedia, and Creative Commons.
And throughout this deep dive, we've seen how the principles of individual empowerment, social anchorage, and learning can guide us towards more effective, adaptable, and value-aligned guardrails.
So as we navigate the complexities of the digital age, let's remember that we have the power to shape the future of guardrails. Let's choose wisely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, Future Minds listeners. Be sure to subscribe to the Future Minds podcast for more deep dives into fascinating topics like this one. And remember, a brand new episode drops every week.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep exploring the frontiers of knowledge. And as you go about your week, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If we could design the ideal guardrails for the age of AI, what would they look like? What qualities would we prioritize? Head over to the comments section and let us know what you think.